Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack, the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches. Hunger is a huge issue in our community. It's said that in some of our schools that the Childhood Poverty Index and the school lunch program have as many as 70% of children living in our area with hunger and with food insecurity. So the Council of Churches, of course, is very obviously involved in ministering to people who are hungry. CHOW is one of our largest programs, and we have figured out how to surround people with emergency food and to be able to meet our needs. How important do you think the work of CHOW is in our community today?
I don't think you can underestimate the critical nature of it. The way the world is right now with the inflation and the increased food insecurity, the need for what CHOW does is just as critical as ever. And
you had some interesting statistics that you shared with us and with the board.
Yeah.
So do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've been doing this work for a long time, the year-to-date increase from 2022 to 2023, we've seen over a 42% increase in need. That's a pretty huge jump. It's hard to put it into a picture, but when you're talking, almost 2.5 million pounds of distribution last year, over 40% more is a lot more over the course of the year. So it's going to be a record-breaking year.
Well, it almost always is.
Yeah.
One year
almost
to the
every
next.
year, yeah.
But this year particularly, it's not like a small increase. So usually we're seeing it somewhere between 10 to 20% growth from one year to the next. But this year has been an incredible leap.
I mean, we often look back at what I call the pandemic surge as being that spike, the anomaly of the trend. It's a spike, then it come back down. And now with 2023, we're seeing a spike, but it's not coming down. At least we can't see it coming down anytime soon. So in some respects, 2023 may be a bigger year than the pandemic surge. And what that means for the future, I don't know. It's kind of a disconcerting thought.
Is there a way of putting that into numbers of people, that kind of thing?
So, when you think about the numbers of meals, which that means, at this point, or in 2022, we were talking about over 2 million meals. We serve well over 200,000 people a year. That's obviously duplicated numbers, but that's as many people that come through our pantries and meal sites every year. That's a lot of people. When you factor in an increase of 40% at least, you're talking another close to 900,000 more meals. Maybe another 100,000 more people. That's a huge increase.
And when you're talking duplicated numbers, that means that there are people that come routinely. So if you're living on a fixed income, for instance,
exactly,
you oftentimes toward the end of the month, you are almost always going to hit that wall.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing when we think about, people want to think, and we hope that CHOW is a one-time experience for people. We'd love for everyone to have be in a spot where they just need that little extra bit, and then they're good forever. But like you mentioned, it's the end of the month when people's benefits start to run out, and that unfortunately is moving up earlier into the month. as their benefits with, the cost of food is increased. And so like you said, they hit that wall, they've run out of benefits, and they've got to still feed their families. And so that's what we're there for.
And not only that, the people that are living on pensions, the elderly, right. the folks who have limited income right. anyway, those right. are those folks oftentimes have to make a choice between whether they go to a food pantry or, the choice actually is more like I have this much money, mm-hmm. I need medicine mm-hmm. or I need food, mm-hmm. so they end up at a food pantry.
Yep. And it's a real thing. I think maybe when people hear that, they think it's sort of an abstract or almost a made-up concept, but it's not. I mean, I hear stories from our pantries that come back to me where I'm thinking of one right off the top of my head. An elderly couple came to a pantry and they were able to get food, and they said to the person, "Now I can buy my prescriptions this month." They may be abstract to some of us, and I'm very grateful that I'm not in that pinch spot, but for some people that's a very serious reality. Making those types of decisions we ought not to have to make, and right. yet some people are stuck in that spot.
So as we've been thinking about and trying to work toward where CHOW is kind of evolving and mm-hmm. what CHOW is evolving into, one of the things that we concentrate on more these days is fresh and healthy food. Right. So produce and right. dairy and meats and those kinds of things. But those all come with something of a shelf life.
Right.
You need to be able to store them safely, and you need to be able to distribute them safely right. in order for people to really benefit from mm-hmm. them. So, how have we been? What are some things in the works that are helping with that situation?
You're absolutely right. The vast majority of the food we do is called recovered food. And it's food that I like to call it's past its sell-by date, but not past its use date. And the vast majority of that is perishable food, produce, meats, dairy. And because of the nature of it, it's got to be distributed very quickly. And so over the last few years, we've worked on getting vehicles that can transport it from a distributor or a grocery store back to the warehouse or to an agency. And we've worked really hard at that, and we've been very great. Blessed to get a couple new trucks over the last couple of years that can do that, refrigerated trucks. But once it goes to a pantry or a meal site, they've got to be able to store that food. And so it's a full process. And so what we've been working on is getting cold storage into our pantries and meal sites.
Well, I should really introduce you. This is Les Aylesworth. He's our CHOW director, and we've gotten into the conversation. It's interesting when we start talking food, we automatically go into that direction these days. But got to remember, I'm the encounter host, and in order for us to actually get through let our audience know who you are, it's important to do that. So familiarity, I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, familiarity breeds a lack of decorum, I guess. So the refrigerated trucks. Let's let them know. Let our audience know. So, we talk about a refrigerated truck, and that we've been fortunate to get some refrigerated trucks. How much does a truck cost?
Upwards of $150,000 a refrigerated vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not talking trivial.
No, we're not. No. We're not talking small things. We're not talking like a little refrigerator van. We're talking 26-foot, fully refrigerated box trucks.
And so what has happened here recently is that we've had to go from having smaller trucks to these larger trucks mm-hmm. because of the volume mm-hmm. that we've been able to that we're encountering these
yep.
days. So the larger trucks are meeting our needs. But then CHOW isn't just the warehouse
right.
and the trucks and mm-hmm. all of that kind of stuff. So how have we been working with our partners in order to make the fresh food more available to people?
Yeah, so I think it's a good reminder that CHOW is just not the warehouse. It's a network of over 100 different emergency food programs that we support. We give them food at no cost, but without them, we couldn't do the work we do. And without them being able to store food, they couldn't do the work they do. And so then you see that trickle back effect of without them, we can't do our work. Without storage, they can't do their work. And so probably for many years, it's been the wish of CHOW to be able to provide cold storage for our agencies. And I can remember when I first came being thought, wouldn't it be great if we could get a grant that would enable us to purchase refrigerators and freezers for pantries that could then store more food on site. We have at the warehouse this huge, literally drive-in sized cooler and freezer where we can store a lot of food, but that wasn't always the case out in the community with our community agencies. And so about 1.5 years ago, we began a process of trying to determine what types of cold storage was out there on the streets, so to speak. What did our agencies have? And so we put a survey out to kind of determine those numbers, because we had in a strategic planning meeting an idea of what would it look like if we could replicate the volume that we have at the warehouse out in our agencies. And so we began that process, and that involved a survey, like I mentioned, and to ask questions: what kind of freezers do you have? What do you have? Do you have walk-ins, household, college-sized ones? What's their volume? And try to get not an exact scientific number, but a kind of a ballpark figure as to what was out there. And we had about 20 different agencies respond, which is about 1/5 of all of our agencies. And we started to get a picture of what we had. In the process of that time, I had a meeting with the city, and I presented this idea of this. We would really like to get cold storage out to our agencies, and they thought that was a great idea. And so we had a few more conversations, and they asked us to get more information as to what were the actual needs. And so last summer, like I said, almost 1 year ago, we started to contact the City of Binghamton pantries and meal sites to find out what exactly could you use if we were able to get, you resources. And they got back to us. And so 30 different agencies returned, I guess you would call it a wish list or a needs list of the types of cold storage they could use that would really benefit their programs.
And from that, we'll be able to distribute more fresh food and be able to get out to our to the community the food that we have that is perishable, mm-hmm. which is normally more nutritionally dense.
Exactly.
And less than what you would get if you were just doing cans and stuff.
Exactly.
That would be inside of a pantry. So the ultimate goal, of course, is to end hunger in our area. Mm-hmm. And how do these things work together for us to be able to serve people, I guess, is
Sure.
the ultimate question.
Like ultimately, an agency can't give out food if they can't store it. And like you hit the nail on the head, the food, this perishable food, is the better food. And the truth is a lot of organizations don't want to deal with it. We have taken up this burden to take food waste very seriously. And last year we were able to distribute 1.75 million pounds of recovered food, much of it being the perishable, nutritionally dense food. But without that proper storage at the end, that'll be lost. And so we want to even reduce our community's food waste even more, to be able to give that good, high quality food that obviously is short dated. It doesn't have an indefinite lifespan, not like cans, like you said, and get it out to the community. And without the ability for them to store that you need a cooler to do that. You can't just set a gallon of milk on the counter and hope it lasts. You need that cold storage. And so without that cold storage, the work they do would be impossible. And so we want to enhance that.
So 1.7 million pounds of recovered food. It's hard for people to picture that,
right.
and we've done a little bit of work at
right.
trying to figure out how to picture that.
Right.
So tell our audience,
sure,
a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, it's a big number and it's sort of abstract, but we got thinking about what might that look like. And so I have a friend who owns a garbage truck business, or a garbage business, and he has garbage trucks. I said, how much does a garbage truck hold? Well, he got back to me, and I did the math, and I realized by doing that, the amount of food we distributed would fill up 88 garbage trucks. And I think everyone knows what a garbage truck looks like. And so I could just picture a parking lot full of garbage trucks, or like a convoy of 88 garbage trucks going to the dump. Those 88 garbage trucks did not go to the dump because of the work we do, and that's it's something for us to be proud of.
Now, what's the ecological impact?
Yeah, we've been working on that to try to figure out what the methane that would be. We haven't. There's a few figures and there's a couple of calculators, and I'm still learning how to do that, but it has an absolute environmental impact. I mean, I've read that food waste is the biggest part of garbage, of the landfill. The majority of the food that goes into the majority of garbage that goes into a landfill is wasted food. And so from that perspective alone, we are doing our part to make a dent. I'd like to think it's a pretty good sized dent in our local community.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've done, at my Rotary Club, we've had people come in and talk a little bit about our garbage
Mm-hmm.
and our landfills, and how, what they would normally have to do in order to accommodate all the food waste is put down pipes down into the ground to help release the methane. So
Mm-hmm.
they have these emergency capped valves.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't have that, then what they would be having is because of the heat that generated from the methane and other kinds of things, they would be having fires and
that's a scary thought.
Other things that would be occurring underneath the ground in order to accommodate that. So they have these release valves that come up, but all that comes with a huge cost.
Right.
So the
Right.
more you have, the more technology has to go into a landfill,
Mm-hmm.
the more costly the landfill is
Right.
for the taxpayer and for people.
Exactly.
The municipalities that have to monitor it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and because it's good food, it's much better served to be put out in the community to feed
Exactly.
people. And so it's a win-win when we do that. And so, but we can't do that unless we have the proper storage of it. And that's always been as I've been into this, the emergency food system business now, you see some of the problem points, the pain points are transportation and storage are two of the biggest ones, because we obviously don't have an abundance of food problem. If we're wasting 40% of all food, we obviously have enough food, but it's getting it from the fields to the factories to the people who need it. It's the transportation and then the storage of it that becomes the pain points. And so we've been working on the transportation part for years, and now we're really trying to focus on that storage part as well.
now, so tell our audience a little bit about how the food gets to us. So for instance, from the grocery stores and or the truckers or other kinds of things. So how is this food recovered?
Sure. So recently there was legislation passed that they call them food waste food wasters, I guess is the term, and that's grocery stores, food distributors. We go to the grocery store, we see food, there's a date on it. It says used by whatever that date is, or sell by that date. And those dates there's a whole nother subject on that, whether they're accurate or not. But the point is that food will go bad eventually, and it gets to a point where they can't sell it, people won't buy it. And so rather than them throw it away, we've said, give it to us and we'll put it to good use. And so that's what we do. So we've gotten to the point where I think it's kind of neat, where if someone goes to like the Lineage Logistics, where it's a big warehouse hub where people bring stuff, and there's a food that can't be distributed or whatever, they'll tell the trucker, hey, we know a great organization called CHOW, give them a call, they'll come get it. And sure enough, they'll call us, and we make arrangements, because it's usually very fast. We got to be there in a heartbeat, and we do. And sometimes we get some fantastic stuff that way. And so that's it. So it comes from restaurants, grocery stores, food distributors, Binghamton University Dining Hall. We're trying to funnel all that, what would end up in the dump, to us so we can give out to the community.
My guest today has been Les Aylesworth. We've been talking about CHOW and its some new developments that have come come into fruition through the work with the city, the $75,000 that is going to go toward our CHOW pantries so that they can have refrigeration and freezer units installed into the pantry, and the necessity for that as far as minimizing food waste and making more food available for our community, because the need is so great in our area. Now Les, I don't know if our audience knows that you are also a minister.
Yep.
So we've and you and I have talked, along with a number of other folks inside of in the organization, about why are we involved in food recovery and making food available for hungry people? What is it about our faith that kind of impacts that?
Yeah, that's the crux of what we do. I mean, we're the Broome County Council of Churches, and so because of that, faith is incredibly important to the work we do. I mean, on a certain level, it's common sense. There's a certain, you don't want to waste food. People need to be fed. We all eat, regardless of your beliefs and whatnot. But as Christians, we believe that Jesus called us to do something. He gave many examples in his ministry of feeding people and telling us to look out for those who, as I've heard, the least, the last, the lost. And so we have a mandate. I believe I have a mandate to be on the lookout for those folks. I'm very grateful that CHOW provides me a vehicle to kind of live those things out in a real tangible way, to be able to feed, God's people and all of God's creatures. Are, regardless of whatever their beliefs are, they're valuable and they're important and worthy of help. There's no, what I love about it is there's no sense of winners and losers and some people deserving and undeserving. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people do in our society. But we pick and choose, I don't like that person, I like that person. I'll help that person, I won't help that person. One of the cores of the Broome County Council of Churches is everyone is valuable, and therefore everyone is deserving of help. And so we work every day to try to make that happen.
Yeah, we like to talk about how all people are created in the image of God.
Exactly.
And it's important for us to be able to honor that image. You don't treat God's image as if it's trash.
Right.
You don't dismiss God's image. You have to treat it with a certain level of holiness and sacredness.
Indeed. You often say we're a Matthew 25 organization. The story, the parable Jesus gives of dividing the goats and the sheep, and uses the examples of, you fed me when I was hungry, you visited me when I was in prison, you helped me when I was sick, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the people are like, when did we do that? Or when did we not do that? Those images in that parable are actually many of the images, actually the various programs that we do at the Council of Churches, feeding people, visiting people in the hospitals when they're sick, in prison, elderly folks who are in need of help and are ill, and that's the work of the Council of Churches, and so to be a part of that is exciting to me. It's very exciting.
Yeah, and recently I've started thinking about Matthew 25 and juxtaposing it to Ezekiel, I believe it's 34, but where you have the flock out inside of in the field, and God's looking for a shepherd, or where the shepherds are, and instead of finding the shepherds tending the flock, they're fleecing the flock.
Exactly.
They're doing all this, the fat parts of the the flock are eating on the weaker parts of the flock, and God says, this shouldn't happen this way. But it seems to me when we're in our political talk and in our theological reflection at times, we get more involved in the fleecing and in the feeding on our fellow travelers than actually in serving and doing the things that God wants us to in the flock.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a sad commentary, and that's the whole point of that in Ezekiel. It's a sad commentary of what their leadership is doing. They're taking advantage of the vulnerable people. The people they're supposed to be taking care of, they're actually taking advantage of. And how wrong is that? I mean, everyone sees that. That's just lowly. And yet, I don't think people realize how, I don't know the right way to put it, how small our budget is at the Council of Churches is, and how every dollar that we get, it goes towards helping people. And we talk about $1 to CHOW is 5 meals, and because what we do when people give us gifts is it goes right out to the community. You mentioned the $75,000 that the city's going to provide us for cold storage for city organizations. We're not getting $75,000. We're literally not going to get a penny of that. That $75,000 is for the community. We're just going to administrate that and help organizations get the cold storage they need. And so I think someone would go, wow, CHOW got $75,000. We didn't get really, and I'm not complaining at all. That's not truly at all. The whole point of it was to be able to help our agencies, and and so that they can then help the community. And we're very grateful to be a part of that. And it's a win for us.
It really is, because it benefits everyone.
Exactly.
And that's the role that I think we play within our community. We really do care about our community, and I think one of the reasons is we have such good leaders like you, Les.
Well, thank you.
And the rest of our staff is just they all have that heart for service, and it comes from a lifetime, really, of commitment to serving people, and many of our staff, and you included, your personal testimony would reflect that you have been hungry as well, and that our lives are enriched by us being able to help and serve each other.
Absolutely, and exactly. I grew up poor. I know what it's like to come home and there's no food in the cupboard, and so I've had this, what they call a lived experience. I have that. And yet it was good, godly people who came alongside and said, let me help you at times. And in ways that I've had to look back in my life and I didn't notice it at the time. But that was what I believe was the hand of God working through those people to be those Matthew 25 sheep. They did stuff. They didn't even know they were doing it maybe themselves. And yet, some poor kid, they ministered to him, and now here I am able to give back.
I want to thank you, Les, for being on Encounter today. And for all of you, I hope you would be good and kind and gentle to each other and care about God's flock.